Is Rick ready to move on? This is the Rick and Morty Season 8 finale. The episode opens up with something I wasn't expecting, and it's Rick sleeping with Bug Ann. Bug Ann is a character who has been in the background of the show here and there in the form of cameos, but it wasn't until this season, Season 8, where she played bigger roles like in the Season 8 Space Beth episode, and of course this one, the season finale. Bug Ann invites Rick to a ceremonial tournament hosted by her family. Rick quickly shoots her down by saying that she shouldn't get any closer to him or risk him getting bored or disliking her. Rick returns home with Beth and Space Beth judging his love life, but Jerry jumps in to defend Rick, recalling how good he's been to the family. At this point, we all know something's up. Rick scans Jerry's memories only to find that Memory Rick has been hiding there for a while. More specifically, ever since Jerry's and Rick's brains were shuffled last season. Rick pulls Memory Rick out of Jerry's head and puts him into an ant farm brain, trapping him. And Rick resets Jerry's memory back to normal, leaving him clueless, as always, to what happened. But in these events, Rick got an idea. He took the memory of Diane out of his head. He did this to be more emotionally available. While Beth is looking for Rick, she gets zapped by the ant farm brain, and Memory Rick gets implanted in her head. Now Rick agrees to go with Bug Ann to the ceremonial tournament. Memory Rick overheard that Rick removed Diane from his head. He plans on rescuing her with the help of Memory Beth. Rick mistakenly mentions that him and Bug Ann hooked up to her parents, but as it turns out, Bug Ann's species has a ritualistic, honor-based duels over premarital sex, so now Rick has to fight Bug Ann's ex. Meanwhile, Memory Rick trains Beth through her memory self, eventually reuniting with Memory Diane. I know the word memory is being thrown around a lot, just bear with me. While on her mission reuniting her memory parents, Beth runs into some trouble with Space Beth. Space Beth tries to stop Beth from listening to Memory Rick, which breaks out into a fight and ends up with Space Beth getting her neck broken by Beth. Which is a moment I really wasn't expecting, but honestly, I thought this is where Space Beth's character was going to end. It unfortunately was not, but I digress. Memory Rick notices the plan isn't going so smoothly and leaves Diane by herself while he figures out what's going on. This gives her the opportunity to wander off and run into Memory Beth. Diane tells her that they are both memories, which doesn't go over well with her. Back in the death arena with real Rick, Bug Ann and Rick argue about why they're in this situation, with Ann saying that Rick could have not come and definitely didn't have to take the memory of Diane out of his head. With this, Rick teleports back to the garage to undo it. He discovers Space Beth on the floor and helps her, stating that her middle spine is the reason why she's not dead. Damn it. Rick pieces together what's going on. Rick and Space Beth go off to try to rescue Beth as her mind is in danger. And there's a lot happening inside real Beth's head. Memory Rick and Diane are catching up to recent memories to talk to Beth, just with a slight delay. And Memory Beth is awakening more of her memory selves. Her brain gets so scrambled that she tries to kill herself, attempting to jump off a cliff, but Space Beth saves her in time. And then she steals Space Beth's gun to shoot herself, but the real Rick talks her out of it. Rick resets her mind and pulls Memory Rick and Diane out of her head. He tells the family that Memory Rick and Diane are gone. This notably upset the family, and Rick storms out, explaining his justifications for it. But this is where we learn the truth, where Rick didn't kill them. He instead gave them an ant farm brain and an empty patch of space, where they can continue being together. Rick would rather not remember what he did and says he's going to mind blow himself. Lastly, we see the real Rick saddened by his lack of a happy ending. Rick checks his messages, and we discover that Bug Ann has left him on red. As for the post-credit scene, we see Mr. Poopy Butthole is trapped in a lab, talking about Season 8. And his wife Amy explained that she believes him to be from a whole nother reality, as his atoms vibrate on a different frequency from theirs. And that's a wrap on Season 8 of Rick and Morty, and what a way to go out. We got so much Diane in this episode, which is always interesting to see. But at this point, I'm wondering what's going to be next for Rick and Morty. The show is cleared for at least a couple more seasons, and it seems like the show is a little lost. At least that's how it feels like to me. The show lost its main antagonist, that being Rick Prime. And that's with the fact that looking back on it, we didn't even see that much of him before he was gone. I mean, we're talking about the guy who created Rick as we know him, who also just happened to be our Morty's real grandfather. Ever since the start of the show, the main driving force behind the plot has always been Rick Prime and Diane. The person Rick lost and the person who showed him infinity. Now that Rick Prime is gone, all we have to look forward to is Rick possibly getting Diane back. But after 8 seasons, we are nowhere closer to that goal, and it would really suck if they just figure it out within 1 or 2 episodes. So it doesn't seem like the writers are going down that direction, and maybe this season finale was the start of that. With Rick having a new love interest and him trying to finally move on from Diane, which they have made clear that's what he was trying to do in this episode. This was a very serialized episode, that's why I mentioned these things. This isn't the main focus on the video, obviously it's about the season 8 finale, but I'll wrap up this part by saying they should bring back some of the weight of the show. They can do that in the form of bringing back characters such as Rick Prime or possibly Diane. I know that seems improbable or downright impossible, but I'm just thinking about all the characters they've brought back or have had death fake-outs such as Squanchy, Bird Person, and Space Beth in this episode. Anyway, this was a plot-heavy episode, that's why I mentioned the plot-heavy topics, but Season 8 was amazing and this episode was amazing as well. The start and finish of seasons are always fan favorites and for good reason. One part of the episode that really stands out to me was the Smiths family talking about how great Memory Rick is and wondering why they got stuck with C-137. And on the other hand, the Memory Beths wonder why they got stuck with Memory Rick and didn't get a great father like C-137 at the end of this episode. This goes to show you really don't know how good you have something until it's gone. This season, we also see Rick grow a lot. I know I complain a lot about the show not having any weight anymore, or at least not having as much as it used to, but this really gave room for Rick to truly relax and finally focus on his family and being a better person. I think we've seen that throughout Season 8 as a whole. And I know I'm not the only one who's noticed this, but Morty has increasingly become more comfortable and more aggressive in Season 8, almost like he's not scared of Rick anymore, so that's something to keep in mind as the series continues. Anyway, we'll see if what I said has any relevance in future seasons, but we'll just have to wait for that. It's been great going over Season 8 with y'all. As always, I'm just a side character, and I will see y'all next time.